Hey everyone, and welcome back to Startup Nomad. This week we're here with Tenecia Brown. She is a Houston-based entrepreneur who is the CEO and co-founder of Gradeness, and she's a mentor at Yes We Code, which is a 4-day hackathon during Essence Fest. So welcome, Tenecia. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So maybe we could get started if you could tell us a little bit about your journey into entrepreneurship. What's your story and how did you end up as a co-founder?
So my journey has been a little bit interesting. I was one of those types of people that I actually wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I was scared of being an entrepreneur because I liked steady paychecks, but I didn't like corporate environments. And when I say that, I mean I liked having a paycheck every 2 weeks and I liked the steady income, but I knew that I did not like corporate settings because I did not like staying within the confines of a box, meaning like when I went to work every day, I knew that I had to perform the task of a project manager or the task of a PR person or the task of a consultant or the task of a marketing assistant. And when I say task, I mean those were the jobs that I had throughout my corporate career. And while I learned a lot from each position that I had, I didn't like going to work every day to fulfill only those tasks. So what I struggled with was really leaving corporate America because I liked the steady paycheck. So really what happened is I was forced out. And my journey really ended in corporate America with me getting laid off from Reliant Energy, which was my last corporate job. And I got laid off at the end of, actually it was at the end of last summer, and it was the best thing that could have happened to me because it forced me to leave, and it forced me to really pursue my passion for entrepreneurship, and that's how my journey started.
Awesome. And that's actually a really common story. I hear a lot of people say that they had always been interested in the entrepreneurship world, but they hadn't jumped in until something kind of forced them into it. But kind of picking up on that, once you were laid off, what was it that made you decide to do your own thing instead of just looking for another steady corporate job?
Well, the thing that kept me looking, actually what I did is I struggled between my heart and my head, and also I struggled between my heart and my family. So my family, I have in my family a couple of people who are entrepreneurs, but then I also have people in my family who have had a lot of success as corporate people as well. So when you have the combination of both sets of types of people, then you get conflicted. So on one hand, I had people telling me that the corporate track was the safest track because they've had much success in like 20, 30 years of corporate success. And then on the other hand, I had people that, were entrepreneurs and, knew the struggles of entrepreneurship, but then made a lot more money as an entrepreneur than they ever made in the corporate sector. So it was kind of balancing between which direction do you really go in and versus which direction do you kind of steer away from. So really what wound up happening is I continued to apply for jobs and I interviewed a lot, but I never got anything, which I found really ironic. So when I applied for all these jobs and nothing happened, and when I say nothing happened, like I was never offered anything. So when that happened, I just figured that wasn't meant for me. And I just took that approach. And so it got to the point to where I stopped applying. And I really started pursuing entrepreneurship full time. And I just had to start making it work for me. And it got really difficult. And sometimes I'm being very transparent. It still gets extremely difficult because funds get really, really limited and get very, very tight. And it's how do you make that work and how do you live and survive, because you still have bills and you still have your livelihood, but how do you figure it out and make it work because your income isn't as steady sometimes as it used to be in your corporate job.
Right. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about your company and what you guys do?
So with Gradeness actually is still in its concept form, to be honest. And it really spun out of the hackathon. And it started out as a conversation, or a part of a conversation that I actually had with one of my cousins when I was in Houston, and he wasn't doing his homework. But the other part of that problem was sometimes his mom didn't even know that he had homework. So what we started figuring out is that, okay, as a parent, and as a disclaimer, I am not a parent, but I know other people who are parents, they didn't even realize that their kids had homework. So the conversation would go something like this: hey mom, you know, we had a good day in school today and I want to go outside and play, or, you know, something along those nature. The mom would ask, or the parent would ask, hey, do you have homework? The child would immediately say no. And then the mom would just go on, cook dinner, or go on and do something else for the rest of the evening. And then it comes down to like a progress report, or the kid is in athletics and the kid can't play because his grades are bad. And then the parent is trying to figure out, why are your grades bad? And part of the problem is because they weren't doing their homework. And then the mother's like, well, I thought you told me you didn't have any homework. And then the mother finds out that the kid was lying the entire time. So she's like, well, how did I not know that you didn't have homework? So part of the problem was, or part of the solution that we discovered, is that maybe we can just come up with a notification system that alerts parents on when their kid has homework. So that way, even if they ask the kid if they have homework and the kid doesn't tell the truth, that the school or teacher alerts the parent anyway, so that the parent has visibility into when the child has homework, so they know how to stay on top of it, therefore increasing the kids' grades in their classroom. That's the whole premise and concept of Gradeness.
Okay, awesome. So that's, again, a very common story and a great way to start a business, that you saw a problem just, you know, out there in your everyday life, and so you came up with a solution to it, as opposed to just coming up with something that you wanted to sell and trying to build a business around it.
Correct.
So I know that you have a co-founder, and one question people ask me all the time is where they can look to find people to start a company with. So I'd love to hear about how you met and you know, decided to start a company with the person that you're in business with.
Okay, so the co-founder, my co-founder and I are no longer together.
Okay.
But my co-founder and I actually went to the same undergraduate university. So we both went to the University of Texas at Austin. And but we did not meet each other physically until the hackathon in New Orleans.
Okay.
So since we shared the same alumni, our alumni is big on support. And I really liked part of the idea that he had in mind. And Gradeness was a combination of ideas. So it was a combination of a discussion that I had with my cousin. It was a combination of an idea that he had, or that he discovered as a parent, because he is a parent. And it was also a combination of an idea that a student had from his perspective. So we took 3 combinations of ideas and put them together. So with that being said, 2 mentors decided to team up, and after we won Best Market Validation at the hackathon, my former co-founder and I decided to go ahead and start a business, and that's how we found each other. So it was really, we just shared a mutual love for education. We shared a mutual love for our alumni, and then we just had a mutual passion for the idea itself.
Awesome. And now at the hackathon, there's been lots and lots of press lately about women in tech and how there are not enough women in tech, and the environment that women face in tech. So I'm curious, and you know, maybe you do, maybe you don't want to touch this topic, but what's been your experience as a woman? And also, you know, I'm a Latina and I used to run the Entrepreneurship Center at the Howard University School of Business. So not only as a woman, but a woman of color in tech, there really probably aren't that many of us out there. Right. So I'd love to hear about your experience, you know, in that environment.
I will be honest with you and tell you my experience to date hasn't been that bad, but I will also probably attribute it to me preparing for the opportunity that I have right now many years ago. I used to work in higher education. I did strategic planning for Houston Community College about 4 years ago. And while I was there, I actually had a sponsor. And there, I believe there is a huge difference between mentorship and sponsorship. And my sponsor was a white male. And that sponsor really showed me how to survive in a male-dominated industry, whether it's education, technology, anywhere. And he really showed me the tools of the trade to survive. So I took a lot of his teachings, his knowledge, and I studied him and I learned from him. And as a result, I could apply every single thing that he taught me and use it right now today. So based off of that experience and based off of me studying and learning from him, my experience hasn't been that difficult. Now, I won't say that as I continue to seek funding, because that's the phase that I'm in right now, and as I continue to go through an incubator and work with some other people throughout this process, I won't say that my experience won't be a little bit different, but as of right now and to date, it hasn't been that bad. But I think that as a female, I support other females, and I do think that there is such a thing as being a double minority, and I do truly believe that it can be the case, and I know that it is the case for a lot of people. But I also know that sometimes if you have somebody that will show you the ropes, and if you can get insight from somebody who knows the game better than you, and you can learn from them, I would say take it and run with it, because it can save you a lot of time, it can save you a lot of heartache, and it can save you a lot of tears down the road.
Gotcha, good advice. So you went to school in Austin, which is probably the place that most people hear about when you think of Texas and startups, but now you're in Houston. So could you tell me a little bit about what the startup scene is like in Houston?
To be honest with you, I don't think Houston is as a community or a tech scene is as progressive as Austin is. And it's actually something that I've thought about before I got in the position of having a startup. And I thought about moving because Houston, in my opinion, just isn't there just yet. But I think that it will be. And one of the beauties about working in higher education and doing strategic planning is I had to do future planning. So I had to do a lot of research, and the guy that sponsored me is a doctor, as in PhD. So I had to conduct a lot of research, and I got to see what Houston in 2020 would look like. And what I saw based off of research was pretty amazing. So based off of some of the stuff that I saw, like urbanization and a lot of the technology that's coming and a lot of stuff that's going to happen with STEM, Houston is probably going to be a big breeding ground pretty soon. So I don't think it's there just yet, but I think that it will be there in the next couple of years. Austin is still pretty significant right now, but I think Houston is well on its way. It's not as progressive as I would like it to be, but I think that it will be within the next couple of years.
Wow, okay, that's a nice insight. So last question for you, and this I ask of everybody, but you've already given a bit of it, so maybe you'll have a little bit more. What is your advice for aspiring entrepreneurs?
My advice for aspiring entrepreneurs is to use all the tools in your arsenal. And I think that for me, what I've recognized at this particular point in time on my journey is every job that I've had and every skill that I've had to hone plays a part into what I'm doing right now. So there are some times where when I was working, or like when I had a PR firm. I didn't realize why I was doing what I was doing. Yes, my degree is in public relations, but I didn't thoroughly enjoy public relations like I thoroughly enjoy this startup in ed tech. But I realize now why I had to do it, because it makes sense. And at one point, I didn't realize why I had to do project management. At one point, I didn't realize why I had to understand profit and loss statements, things like that. And for me, that one thing that I truly have begun to understand is use all your tools, surround yourself with people who are way smarter than you, and also get really great mentors and get people who are willing to teach you, and then be willing to listen and learn. Because sometimes I know for myself, I used to be really, really stubborn, and I knew that I was smart, but I didn't know how much I didn't know, and that's also important. And then just surround yourself with really good people, because it gets hard and it gets lonely. And surround yourself with people who are in the same process that you are in, because like right now I'm in my infancy, and there are other people who are like leaps and bounds in another set of the process that I am in. And that's great, because I know that it can be done, but I'm also looking at people who are the same exact stage that I am in as well, because I need that level of support. So the biggest thing that I would say is use your tools, surround yourself with really good people. Remember, it's a marathon and not a sprint, so pace yourself and keep yourself around people with great energy, and be willing to learn. And the other thing that I'm learning, no, I think the last thing that I would say is go into it like you know nothing. I think that's the best thing to do. Just like you know nothing, and just be willing to learn everything over again. Because if you go into it like a child and you don't know, then you're open to receive new information, and maybe in a new way.
Awesome, great advice. Thank you so much for your time, Tenecia.
You're welcome.